Well, good morning and thank you all for coming out today. We want to take a few minutes this morning to talk about traffic safety, where we are as a city right now with the traffic fatalities that have already occurred this year. And obviously we're on the verge of summer and a very dangerous time on the roads with all the people that'll be traveling. And so where we stand today, we have had 30 fatalities already this year. And this is in comparison to 23 last year at this same time. So we've experienced a 30% increase in traffic fatalities so far this year. But what is also noticeable is that over the past 6 months, over the past 6 weeks, we've had a majority of these fatalities. We had 11 traffic fatalities occur in the month of April, and we've already had 5 so far this month in May. So this is a trend that is concerning for us. And we want to put out again our safety messages that are so important for everyone to follow to keep everyone safe. So far this year, there have been 12 pedestrian fatalities. This is a 50% increase over where we were last year. 11 of these pedestrians, when they were killed in these crashes, were not in areas meant for crossing. They were not in a crosswalk. And 6 of these occurred on IH-35 or its frontage road. High-speed roadways that are not meant, again, for people to be crossing. So there are steps that we can take to avoid these fatalities. We also know that 11 of the victims of our pedestrian fatalities were members of our homeless community here in Austin. And so we're working to provide education in that area as well, steps that can be taken to avoid these crashes. We know so far this year are serious injury crashes that involve DWI. So it's either crashes that did not result in a fatality, however, someone or persons were seriously injured in these crashes, are up 180%. We've had 14 so far this year compared to 5 last year. So we're seeing some trends that are concerning to us, and we know that as we're on the eve of summer beginning, we know we have the Republic of Texas Motorcycle Rally coming here June 13th through 16th, which will bring a lot of people into our community to enjoy everything Austin has to offer, and many of them will be on motorcycles. And so as we should pay attention year-round to people riding motorcycles on our roadways, it is especially important that weekend given the influx of motorcycle riders that we will have here in Austin enjoying the Republic of Texas Rally. It was also noted by CBS Austin this morning that the Austin Round Rock metro area was just named the second best summer vacation destination in the United States. So on top of those that already come to Austin on a regular basis to enjoy everything we have to offer, this may draw more people to our great community. And again, there are steps that we can all take to make it safer on the roadways. And those steps are things we talk about fairly frequently. Impaired driving. There is never an excuse to drive drunk. There are far too many options, and we know too much the dangers of driving under the influence of alcohol or drugs. Have a plan. Have a designated driver. If that fails, don't get in the car with a drunk driver, a driver who's been drinking, and don't drive if you yourself have been drinking. Use one of these other options. Use one of the other available options, a transportation network company. Use a cab. Use public transit, Capital Metro. Call someone. Do not get behind the wheel if you've been drinking. Do not become or do not create one of these statistics, because each and every one of these statistics is a human life, is a mother, a father, a brother, a sister, a son, or a daughter. And there is just simply no excuse. We will continue many of our enforcement initiatives over the summer. We are currently partnered with the Austin Transportation Division, and we're thankful for their support that has allowed us to continue our no refusal operations every weekend, year-round, but also on holidays and other times during the year that we will randomly select to be no refusal periods. Again, we are taking a strong stance, as we have for years, on impaired driving. There is simply no excuse, and we are a no refusal city, and we will do mandatory blood draws on these times if we believe that you have been impaired. Distracted driving continues to be an issue in our community. As much as we talk about it, it doesn't take much to look left, look right when you're driving in Austin, whether it be on a residential street or on one of our major highways, and to see people that have handheld devices in their hands, phones, iPads, and I'm sorry, that is just irresponsible as a driver, and we are seeing lives lost, we are seeing people injured, and that's why it is not allowed. Put the phone down and use it responsibly. If you're stopped in traffic at a stoplight, you can take a look. But when you're operating that motor vehicle, when you are in motion, you cannot have that device in your hand. We need people to comply with this. Again, we're seeing far too much distracted driving in the community. Click it or ticket remains. There is just simply no excuse to operate a motor vehicle or to be in a motor vehicle without your seatbelt on. We know far too much how dangerous it is if you are ejected from a vehicle in a crash. Seatbelts save lives. It is that simple. It is that important. Wear your seatbelts when you're operating or riding in a motor vehicle. We will enforce all the traffic safety laws as we do because they're there for a reason. They're there to enforce safe driving. Speed limits, yield signs, stop signs, intersections. We know all too often the dangers that occur at these places, and that's why the laws are in place. Scooters is something new for our community, and we're dealing with that just like all communities around our country are. So be aware that scooters are prevalent, and be aware that they may be in the lanes of traffic as long as they're complying with the same traffic laws that motorists have to comply with. If you're operating a scooter, you must do so safely, and you must do so in compliance with the law. But it's important for those that are driving vehicles on the roadway to be mindful of the scooters and to take steps as well when sharing lanes with these individuals, similar to those on bikes and other modes of transportation. Remember that we have move-over laws, and they're there for a reason. We see far too often the serious injuries or fatalities that occur to either public safety personnel or those that work with us on high-speed roadways when we're working crashes or conducting enforcement. Remember, the law requires you, if there is a police officer, firefighter, emergency service worker, now it includes tow truck drivers and the TxDOT's HERO program as well. If you're coming upon one of them and they have their emergency lights on conducting operations on the roadway, you are required by the law to move over a lane, leaving a lane between you and them, or if you cannot do that in that moment, you must slow down to 20 miles per hour lower than the posted speed limit. And that is something that we are actively enforcing the law on as well, because we know the dangers that poses to the folks that are out there working. Recognize that as summer is upon us now and the kids are out of school, we expect there's going to be a lot more kids out playing. They're going to be playing on the neighborhood streets. They're going to be playing in cul-de-sacs, but also on streets. They're going to be riding their bikes. So it's important that our motorists are mindful that the kids are going to be out there, but it's also important, parents, talk to your kids about operating safely when outside, whether it's crossing the street, make sure you're doing it at a crosswalk, or if you're operating your bicycle, make sure you're doing it in compliance with the law, that you're wearing your helmet, and that, again, you're not riding out in the middle of streets. Pedestrians on I-35. I talked earlier about the number of the auto pedestrian fatalities that have occurred on I-35. There is just simply no excuse. There are other ways to cross I-35. Just simply go to the north or the south, find the next bridge, and cross I-35 safely. There is just simply no reason for trying to do that on foot, and we know all too often the tragic outcomes that occur. So again, there's no excuse for crossing I-35 on foot. We want to have a safe and enjoyable summer. As I said, where we're at right now this year, a significant increase in our traffic fatalities. We know some of the causative factors. These are preventable if people follow the law and follow common sense and good judgment. And together as a community, we all need to come together so that everyone can enjoy Austin this summer and to do so safely. And with that, I'll open it up for questions.
Why do you think there's been an increase? I mean, we've had these causes for a while. Why do you think there's more this year?
Well, I think there's a lot of reasons. Austin continues to grow as a city, and as the population grows, there's more traffic on the roadways. But what we do is we dig down into those contributing factors and we look for things that we can do differently or better to prevent them, and we tend to find some of those same causative factors, whether it be the impaired driving, the speeding, or not minding the traffic control signals at intersections.
Does summer seem to show more fatalities during that season?
Yes, we do know that given the increased use of our roadways, plus the pedestrians that are out there and all of the enjoyment that's taking place, July is actually the highest month statistically for traffic fatalities in our community.
Is that something you kind of mentally go forward with each year?
Absolutely. We pay attention to that, and that's why we get out there not only in our enforcement capacity, but also in our education capacity to try and inform people of what you can do to keep yourself and others on the roadway safe.
Any extra patrols in certain problem areas that you guys are thinking of ramping up during the season, just in lieu of these numbers?
Yes, so what we'll do is we're paying very close attention to the increase, but we maintain a fully staffed highway enforcement command year-round because this is a priority for the police department. We'll use our data-driven approach to identify those intersections or locations of roadway that are the most hazardous for drivers, where we're seeing the highest number of serious injury, collisions, or fatalities, and we'll make sure that we are putting the resources in those areas, and we'll move those around as either new conditions appear based on where construction's occurring at that time, or based on what may be going on in our community that's drawing people to certain parts of town. So we will, again, take a very strong enforcement posture this summer, but we're also working on that education piece as well, because these are preventable.
Apart from just asking the driver, what do you guys do to investigate whether or not distracted driving was a factor in an incident?
So determining whether distracted driving can be difficult. If the officer obviously observes the person being distracted and pulls them over, then that's a little bit different than appearing on a collision that has already occurred. So we'll take witness statements and all, but it is difficult at times to prove whether a person was on their phone or not, and oftentimes it will require us to attempt to get a search warrant through the courts to determine if that device was being used at that time.
Last question.
Have y'all seen like an increase of people fleeing a scene this year as well, or is it about the same?
I don't have the exact statistics for our leaving the scene crashes in front of me today, but I do know that leaving the scene does remain an issue in our community, and it's a good question to ask, because if you flee the scene of a crash where someone has been injured, you have just brought yourself the likelihood of very serious charges for fail to stop and render aid. So the laws are there for a reason. If you're involved in a crash, do the right thing. Call for emergency help, especially if somebody's been injured. Thank you.